Good morning from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where at this hour, flight controllers here working in concert with their Russian counterparts half a world away at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. You're looking at their flight control room from a camera overlooking the balcony in that cavernous room. These two teams are working together side by side, although half a world away, as they monitor the final approach and the final minutes of the Progress 69 cargo craft's arrival at the International Space Station. This unpiloted Russian space freighter was originally scheduled to be launched back on Sunday from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on a Soyuz 2.1A booster. The countdown, however, was terminated and aborted about 20 seconds before liftoff on computer command. Russian engineers down in Baikonur identified the problem, they fixed it, and recycled the launch for Tuesday morning. What had intended to have been a two-orbit rendezvous, a test of a fast-track rendezvous from the launch pad to the International Space Station that would be applicable in the future for both cargo ships and for crewed vehicles, the Soyuz vehicles carrying the crews to the International Space Station. Orbital mechanics dictated that the rendezvous become a two-day rendezvous with that two-day delay, and as a result, we are now just 41 minutes away from the scheduled docking of Progress to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. This cargo ship, the Progress, loaded with 1,940 pounds of propellant, 48 pounds of oxygen, 53 pounds of air, 926 pounds of water, and 3,128 pounds of dry cargo, a total of just over a shade over 6,000 pounds or 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies being brought to the residents of the International Space Station. Docking is scheduled at 4:43 a.m. Central Time today to complete the Progress's two-day journey from the launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. As we said, the original launch attempt back on Sunday was scrubbed in the final seconds before liftoff on a computer command that terminated the countdown. The problem was identified and solved by the Russian engineers, and the launch of the Progress was flawless back on Tuesday morning to deliver the unpiloted cargo craft to the beginning of its 34-orbit two-day journey that will culminate with an automated link-up to the aft port of the Zvezda service module just about 40 minutes from now. You're looking at a view from one of the cameras on the Progress vehicle, this familiar black and white cross-haired engineering view that soon will have data overlaid it as the Progress approaches within the neighborhood of the International Space Station. The two vehicles are currently flying 252 miles above the Earth, moving from southwest to northeast over Mauritania on the west coast of Africa in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Some of the highlights coming up in the next few minutes will feature the familiar fly around of the Progress, again all automated, it's all automatically controlled by onboard computers. That fly around to begin just after 4:20 a.m. Central Time. It'll be a fly around of about 108 degrees in angle, and that will align the Progress to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. The Progress will apply the brakes. It will stop its approach at about 4:30 a.m. Central Time for a few minutes of station keeping to allow the Russian flight controllers in Korolyov an opportunity to check out the alignment of the Progress's forward docking probe, as well as all of the other systems before the command is given for final approach, which will begin at about 4:33, culminating with a link-up at 4:43 and 20 seconds a.m. Central Time today. Once the Progress has docked to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, there will be a couple of minutes to allow relative motion between the two vehicles to dampen out before the docking probe at the forward end of the Progress retracts to basically form a hard mate between the Progress itself and the docking port on the aft end of the Zvezda service module. That will then be followed by the closing of the Progress hooks at that docking interface, and the rendezvous and docking will have been completed. On board, the two cosmonauts comprising part of the Expedition 54 crew, Anton Shkaplerov and Alexander Mazurkin, will later today, after docking, conduct a couple of orbits worth of leak checks to make sure that there is a tight seal at the docking interface between Progress and the Zvezda service module before they open the hatch to the Progress later today and begin the unloading of some of the more higher priority cargo items that are stored inside this resupply vehicle. Shkaplerov and Mazurkin are in the process of completing their analysis of the testing of the Corps' automated rendezvous system on Progress, which is passed with flying colors. They'll be conducting a test of the telerobotically operated rendezvous system, or the Toru system, from a workstation in the service module a short time from now. This basically is the backup rendezvous system that would be employed by Shkaplerov and Mazurkin in the highly unlikely event that a failure would occur with the core system. They could take over manual flying of the Progress for its docking to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. Once docked, the Progress 69 cargo craft, that is the focus of attention today, will join a twin Progress vehicle that is linked to the Earth-facing port of the Russian segment of the International Space Station on the Pirs docking compartment. The 68 Progress, that is, was launched back in October. It will depart the station at the end of March. The Progress arriving at the International Space Station today, which is 69 Progress, or in the engineering parlance, Progress MS-08, will remain at the International Space Station until the latter portion of August. Here in the Johnson Space Center International Space Station Flight Control Room, the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers is on duty at this hour. They have been watching over station systems and talking to the other crew members on board who are not specifically involved in today's Progress activity, namely NASA astronauts Joe Acaba, Mark Vande Hei, and Scott Tingle, as well as Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency flight engineer Norishige Kanai. On console at this hour, presiding over the Orbit 1 team, is Flight Director Ed Van Cise. He is in the red shirt at the bottom of your screen, joined on console by spacecraft communicator Leslie Ringo, who has been talking with the crew when required during the early portion of today's workday for the team here in Houston. This activity to oversee and supervise the docking of the Progress to the International Space Station today is just another in a series of extremely busy events that have occupied the crew during the course of this week. And there will be no rest for the weary after today's action, because tomorrow two astronauts, Mark Vande Hei and Norishige Kanai, will suit up in their U.S. extravehicular mobility units in the Quest airlock, and they'll venture outside Quest for the 208th spacewalk in ISS history. You see Vande Hei on the left, Kanai on the right. Vande Hei, as extravehicular crew member number 1, will be making the 4th spacewalk of his career. Kanai will be making the 1st spacewalk in his career, only the 4th Japanese astronaut ever to conduct a spacewalk. They will suit up early tomorrow in the Quest airlock in their suits, with Vande Hei wearing the suit bearing the red stripes. Kanai will have no stripes on his suit. Once outside the Quest airlock, they'll embark on a 6.5-hour spacewalk tomorrow to move a latching end effector that was removed last October and which currently resides on a payload bracket on the Mobile Base System rail car on the truss of the International Space Station. They will move that latching end effector off of the mobile base system and bring it inside the Quest airlock, where it will be prepared to be returned to Earth on a SpaceX Dragon cargo craft in the very near future for refurbishment and repair. Back on January 23rd, a few weeks ago, Vanda High and Scott Tingle went outside to swap latching end effectors on the Canadarm2 robotic arm. The one that they took off is currently housed on the stowage platform called ESP2, the external stowage platform right outside of the Quest airlock. That latching end effector, slightly degraded but still very usable, will be placed on that payload attachment bracket on the mobile base system to be used as a spare if required in the future. You're looking live right now inside the Quest airlock, where Mark Vande Hei is collecting some equipment. You see the two spacesuits. Vande Hei will be suiting up in the extravehicular mobility unit on the right. You see the red stripes on the legs of that suit. Norishige Kanai will be suiting up in the EMU, as it is called by its acronym, on the left. That is in the equipment lock section of the two compartment Quest airlock. Just beyond that is the crew lock section, where Vande Hei and Kanai will float into, close the hatch, and it will be depressurized, enabling them to open up the outer hatch cover and begin their spacewalk on Friday morning. Our coverage, as you look at the Progress 69 cargo craft, now just about 5 kilometers away from the International Space Station, a brief view as the station and the Progress are flying just past Italy, about to make a swing over Central Europe at the moment at an altitude of 252 miles. Our coverage of tomorrow's spacewalk by Vande Hei and Kanai will begin at 4:30 a.m. Central Time. They will be well into their spacewalk preparations at that point, having suited up. They'll be pre-breathing pure oxygen to cleanse the nitrogen out of their bloodstreams, as is typical for any spacewalk, preventing any decompression sickness from occurring when they step out into the void of space. The spacewalk itself is scheduled to begin around 6:10 a.m. Central Time, perhaps a bit earlier if the crew is ready to go out earlier. The spacewalk start time will be measured at the point at which Vande Hei and Kanai place their suits on internal battery power. And again, the spacewalk planned for 6.5 hours tomorrow to complete the upgrade of the latching end effectors on the Canadarm2 robotic arm, as they will bring an old latching end effector inside the Quest airlock to ultimately be returned on a SpaceX resupply craft to be launched, the Dragon to be launched coming up in the next few months, and they'll replace that with another spare that has been housed on an external stowage platform, since it was removed in place of a newer latching end effector back on January 23rd.
Sending command power on.
Now inside
Power's on. And
less than a kilometer away, this view now of the International Space Station from the Progress 69 cargo craft. You can see in the lower left-hand corner a couple of values that are very helpful at this point of the rendezvous. The numbers ticking backward are meters now, 920 meters and counting, as the Progress closes the gap between itself and the International Space Station. And the number at the very bottom of your screen on the left lower quadrant in this engineering view from the Progress is the rate of closure, now almost 2.5 meters per second. As the Progress moves ever so close to the International Space Station, it ultimately will dock to the aft port of the Zvezda service module, moving at just 1/10 of a meter per second.
down. Confirmation received. To the right. Confirmation received. To the left. Confirmation received. Pulling. Received. And pushing away from myself. Confirmation received that RET and THC tests are good. And I'm ready to set PU-BPS to initial. and I received all 4 LEDs on. I'm ready to perform step 4.3. Copy.
Итак, есть разрешение, переходим на шаг 4.3.
You are go to proceed with step 4.3.
Alexander Mazurkin and Anton Shkaplerov talking to Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center, indicating that their testing of the telerobotically operated backup rendezvous system, the Toru system, is all checked out and good. A good view of the progress as it flies 252 miles over the Ukraine.
I see one-time LED on.
Выполнил, и команды пересадка проходит.
AGC commands are executed, and will disable operation mode. And
all of the flight controllers here in Houston have been polled by Flight Director Ed Van Cise. They're all go for launch. For docking. Everything looking good. The Progress's systems have been rock solid ever since it
go ahead and select,
blasted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome back on Tuesday morning. Again, the launch was postponed for 2 days after an initial attempt back on Sunday morning. The countdown was aborted in the final seconds, but after the problem was corrected, the Soyuz 2.1A booster launched on time on its second attempt, and since then the Progress, which was delivered into its preliminary orbit 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, has been operating flawlessly.
Итак, у нас ориентировочное время было 13:20 ДМВ.
The initial predicted start of automatic fly around was 13:20. Copy, and we're getting the video image as well. Excellent.
About 3.5 minutes away from the initiation of the fly around by the Progress, all under automated computer commanding. This will be a 108-degree fly around that will align the Progress directly behind, looking straight down the barrel of the aft port of the Zvezda service module, to which the Progress will automatically dock about 25.5 minutes from now. Again, a good view of the International Space Station from Progress, now just 440 meters away, closing at a rate of 1.2 meters per second. All of Progress's systems are operating perfectly. Less than 2 minutes away now from the fly around, inside 400 meters. A great view of the Progress.
1.2 meters per second.
Наблюдаем облет.
We are watching Progress fly around.
And just a touch earlier than had been predicted, the Progress now has initiated its fly around of the International Space Station. Once again, all automatically controlled by its computers to align itself with the aft port of the Zvezda service module.
0.7 meters per second range rate. Large diameter on the service module is about an eighth of a square on the overlay.
Data being received from the Coors automated rendezvous system on the progress all looks good. Everybody very pleased with what they're seeing so far. It has been a smooth trip for the progress since it was launched back on Tuesday morning U.S. time, Tuesday afternoon at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
Wind 0.7 meters per second, closing rate.
Вас понял. Дальность 310, 07 на сближение.
0.7 range rate.
The station and the Progress resupply ship just about to pass directly over the capital of Kazakhstan, the city of Astana, from which the two craft will begin flying from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Russian flight controllers in Korolyov report everything is nominal, no issues, the Progress doing exactly what has been expected of it.
$260 meters, 0.47 meters per second, closing rate.
Принял. 260,
Copy
047 на сближение.
0.47 meters per second.
Progress now reported to be about halfway through its fly around, meeting all of its navigational marks through the performance of the Coors automated rendezvous system. Just 243 meters separating the Progress from the International Space Station, where it will reside, the Progress will, until late August.
235 meters, 0.24 meters per second range rate.
Принял вас.
Copy.
Again, docking is scheduled at 4:43 a.m. Central Time. However, as is customary, the link-up could occur a few minutes ahead of schedule if the Russian flight controllers that you see there in the Space Station Flight Control Room in Korolyov, just outside of Moscow, if the Progress arrives at its station-keeping point and everything looks good, that station-keeping period of time will be reduced, enabling the Progress to begin its final approach ahead of schedule.
meters, 0.2 range rate.
Принял. 220.02 на сближение.
0.2. $250 meters, Range 0.13 meters per second range rate. Continuing with fly around.
Продолжаем облет.
Copy. Continuing fly around.
About 35 degrees of fly around yet to go. You can see on the left side of your screen that vehicle, which is mostly black in color, but with the white instrumentation and propulsion module at the bottom. That is the Progress 68 cargo craft. So just a few minutes from now, there'll be 4 Russian space vehicles at the International Space Station, 2 Soyuz vehicles for the 6 crew members on board the complex, and 2 resupply craft. And you can see in the lower left-hand corner, swinging into the field of view, is the circular docking port at the aft end of Zvezda. Just about 2 weeks ago, Alexander Mazurkin and Anton Shkaplerov were clamoring at that very location to replace some electronics parts on the Lyra high-gain antenna during a Russian record 8-hour, 13-minute spacewalk.
Наблюдаем.
Copy. And we're watching a video. 200 meters. Range rate is 0.09.
Вас понял.
Copy. And lock-on has...
As the International Space Station and Progress fly over China, we are about to move into an orbital sunset. A great view of the Progress with its thrusters firing. Just about to complete its fly around to the station and put on the brakes for a short period of station keeping.
Yasha, do you mind if I select different agency modes?
Да, по вашему усмотрению.
Your go, it's totally at your discretion. Go ahead. Copy. Switching to BPS initial. Got a confirmation that we're in that mode. And working with AGC. I'll set it like this for auto gain control.
Вас понял. Добились наилучшего изображения.
Excellent. That's the best view.
And the Progress has begun a roll program to align its solar arrays in the correct orientation for final approach, contact, and capture.
Экипаж, итак, получено разрешение на самостоятельную выдачу причала.
You are go to manually select final approach. Go ahead and send final approach command. Copy. BPS initial in work. BPS initial confirmed. Sending operation command confirmed. A4 command has been executed. Executed. Final approach. Final approach. Flags are set on both station and Progress.
And without hesitancy, the Russian flight controllers in Korolyov very happy with what they're seeing. All of the Progress systems are rock solid, and so final approach has been initiated a few minutes ahead of schedule.
0.4 meters per second range rate. Copy.
метров дальность, скорость 0,78.
0.78 meters per second range rate.
Примерно 1,5 клетки.
And SM large diameter is taking up 1.5 squares on the overlay.
Вас понял. Итак,
Copy.
визуальную дальность подтверждаете с показанием.
So you confirm that course data matches visual assessment?
Дальность 136.
Range is 136 meters. And range.
Again, you hear the translator talking to, you're hearing the translation of Russian flight controllers talking to Mazurkin and Shkaplerov on the Russian side of the International Space Station. Everything looking great. The Progress just about 118 meters away from its destination. That's the aft port of the Zvezda service module that you see just above the crosshairs in this view from Progress external television cameras, closing at a rate now of about 0.6 of a meter per second.
MCC or?
Была включена фара автоматически.
Yeah, the floodlight was turned on automatically. Copy. So the floodlight was activated automatically. 100 meters, 0.51 meters per second range rate.
Принял.
Copy.
Напоминаем, что с
2.5 squares on the overlay.
Да, я понял.
необходимо будет выдать БПС исходной работы.
Remember, at 60 meters range, you will need to enable
На 30 метрах БПС.
abort command. Copy.
Just over 80 meters now separating Progress from the station.
85
Range.
All of these final events in this two-day rendezvous moving slightly ahead of schedule, which is not unusual.
Три клетки, большой диаметр СМ.
SM large diameter
5 метров.
is taking up 3 squares on overlay,
Проглядывается мишень.
75 meter range, 0.33 meters per second, and we have a good visual on the target.
Мишень одну клетку выше
The target is about 1 square upward of the center of the crosshairs.
Экипаж, в
Copy.
данный момент мы получаем...
Again, once the docking has been completed, the two vehicles, the station itself and the Progress, will have a period of a few minutes where the relative motion from the structural contact between the two vehicles will dampen out. That then will be followed by the retraction of the Progress's docking probe to form a hard mate. The Progress hooks will close at the docking interface, and the whole docking procedure will be complete at that point.
60 meters,
22 нас.
0.22 meters per second.
Мишень одну клетку.
Target is 1 square above the center and half a square to the left of the center of the electronic crosshairs. Copy. We've recovered video, and we copy your above and to the left comments.
50 метров текущая даль.
50 meters, current range,
Скорость 0,20.
0.22 meters per second, closing rate.
Once the docking has been completed, Mazurkin and Shkaplerov will spend the next few hours
Примерно 0,6.
performing a series of leak checks at the interface between the Progress and the aft port of the Zvezda service module before they open the hatches between the station and Progress later today and begin the task of unloading some of the higher priority items, part of the 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies that the Progress is delivering to the station.
45 meters range, SSVP ready, received.
Дальность по-прежнему показывает 49 метров.
Still showing 49 meters for range. Range rate is 0.17 meters per second.
Клетки ниже и правее перекрестия.
The target is half a square
Вас понял, при необходимости оценить
Down
визуально,
and-
сравнить с курсом.
to the right of the center. Copy. And now you will need to take over for visual range assessment. Copy.
You can see in this view from the Progress's cameras the crosshairs
5 meters,
on this television view
15 meters per second, closing rate.
currently aligning with the crosshair docking target at the very bottom of the
To the right.
circular aft port of the Zvezda service module. The service module was launched back in July of 2000, serving as the hub of the Russian segment of the International Space Station.
Нам подтвердили готовность СВП.
And telemetry confirms docking mechanism SSVP already flag is set.
Дальность 37 метров.
Docking mechanism on Progress has been powered up, everything looking good.
Range rate.
Выше
The
перекрестия.
target
35 meters separating Progress and the station.
8 squares upward of the center of the crosshairs, and the crosshairs are aligned. Copy all, Sasha.
Экипаж на ближнем участке, возможно, в последних метрах будем без телевидения, поэтому...
We might lose video image for the rest of the final approach, so please continue running commentary. Copy. I am ready to send command abort enabled, switching to operation mode. BPS initial. That's confirmed. Operation enabled. Abort enabled. Command is armed. Copy. 25 meters.
The reference to abort command enabled is a command that the cosmonauts inside the service module can send if required. That would stop the approach of the Progress in the unlikely event a problem would occur. However, the Progress's systems are operating perfectly in the final seconds here before the Progress reaches its destination.
Crosshairs are aligned. Target is half a square to the right of the center of the crosshairs. Copy. Target diameter is 1 square on the overlay. 20 meters range. Crosshairs are aligned. The target is half a square above and half a square to the right of the center. Copy. Crosshairs are still aligned. The target is 0.4 and 0.3 squares up and right of the...
The synchronicity of two spacecraft, 252 miles above the Earth in plain view, just 17 meters separating the Progress and the International Space Station, now closing at a very slow and deliberate rate, computer controlled at about 1/10 of a meter per second.
The target is slightly below the center of the crosshairs. Copy. About 12-meter range. Crosshairs are aligned. Target is half a square to the right of the center. 1.5 squares is the diameter of the target. Crosshairs are aligned. The target is 0.6 squares upward and to the right of the center of the electronic crosshairs. Copy. Sasha. 2.5 squares is the size of the target on the overlay. Crosshairs are aligned. 0.7 squares above the center of the electronic crosshairs. About a 4-meter range. Crosshairs are aligned. The target is about 0.2 square upward of the center, and right now it's at the center at 3-meter range.
Just 3 meters. Progress about to dock, standing by for contact and capture of the International Space Station.
Standing by for contact. The crosshairs about 0.2 squares. Standing by for contact, Sasha. Contact confirmed.
Contact confirmed and capture confirmed.
And mechanical capture confirmed. Copies. Excellent.
Docking confirmed at 4:38 a.m. Central Time, 5:38 a.m. Eastern Time, as Progress in the International Space Station flew 252 miles just east of the Philippines.
Station, please continue to monitor probe retraction.
Again, the docking was flawless. A textbook 2-day transit for the space resupply ship.
I'll be ready to perform closeout ops on your go.
Docking occurring 252 miles above the Earth as the station and Progress passed just to the east of the Philippines.
Excellent. That's all you need to do. Close out ops and then you'll be done.
Когда вручную, в смысле?
Конечно, я так понял, пока указаний нет.
Yakov, do I understand correctly that we're no go to perform closeout upside yet, correct? Yeah, we haven't received a word that we're go for that yet, so stand by. Yeah, it's just you're hot mic'd. I just wanted to make sure. Right. Once we're done with retraction sequence, we'll give you a go to perform closeout ops.
Хорошо.
Copy.
Once again, there will be a few minutes now in which the relative motion between the two vehicles that were flying in parallel to one another at a rate of about 5 miles a second, that relative motion will dampen out. The docking probe will then retract, and the Progress hooks will close to form a hard mate between itself and the International Space Station.
The Russian segment is in free drift right now, just for your awareness. Copy, thank you.
A view of the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. Flight controllers keeping a watchful eye on the final moments here of the docking activities, waiting for those hooks to close to form a hard mate between Progress and the International Space Station, following a superb and flawless rendezvous. 2-day trip from the launch pad of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, with the launch occurring on Tuesday morning after a 2-day delay. The rest of this journey has been by the book. In this view now inside of the Quest airlock of Norishige Kanai, the Japanese flight engineer from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. He is right by the spacesuit that he will don at this time tomorrow morning, as he and Mark Vande Hei are preparing for a 6.5-hour spacewalk tomorrow. That spacewalk designed to bring inside the Quest airlock a spare latching end effector or hand that was removed last October from the Canadarm2 robotic arm. That latching end effector has resided on a payload attachment device on the Mobile Base System rail car on the truss of the station. It will be brought inside and then returned to Earth on a SpaceX Dragon cargo craft in the near future to be refurbished and reflown. Kanai and Vande Hei, during their spacewalk tomorrow, will then move a latching end effector that was removed from the arm in place of a new one back on January 23rd during a spacewalk that Vande Hei conducted with NASA astronaut Scott Tingle. That latching end effector has been stowed temporarily on an external stowage platform right outside of the airlock. It will be mounted and affixed to the payload fixture on the Mobile Base System to be used as a spare if required in the future. For Kanai, who you see here in the Quest airlock, it will be the first spacewalk of his career, only the 4th Japanese astronaut to conduct a spacewalk in human spaceflight history. He'll be walking in the footsteps, if you will, of Takao Doi, Soichi Noguchi, and Aki Hoshide. And we now have received word from the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control that the Progress hooks are closed. So that is a wrap on this activity, with a hard mate now between the Progress and the International Space Station. A few hours of leak checks will be conducted by Alexander Mazurkin and Anton Shkaplerov coming up to make sure that there is a tight seal at the interface between Progress and the aft port of the Zvezda service module before they open the hatches between the station and Progress later today and begin the process of unloading some 3 tons of cargo.
На МКС.
So with that, we will wrap up our coverage for this morning. It was a perfect rendezvous, a perfect docking that occurred just a few minutes ago at 4:38 a.m. Central Time, 5:38 a.m. Eastern Time, as the Progress and the International Space Station flew 252 miles above the Earth just to the east of the Philippines. So we'll wrap it up for today here in Mission Control with one programming note. Tomorrow, our spacewalk coverage of the excursion outside of the Quest airlock by Mark Vande Hei and Norishige Kanai. Our coverage will begin at 4:30 a.m. Central Time. The spacewalk to begin at 6:10 a.m. Central Time. You can follow it all here on NASA television and on our various social media platforms. So with that, we'll call it a day. Thank you for joining us in the early morning hours this morning. Progress now docked to the International Space Station. This is Mission Control Houston.
Moscow Station on Space to Ground 1.
Вечеринг анализ Г1.
Значит, у меня 3
Go ahead on Space to Ground 1. I have 3 video files on SSC
отправляю по OTA,
that we took during docking.
16.
This is done per radiogram 8116, and the folder will be on OCA with the same name as the